You're listening to Dairy Voice by Dairy Business News, a podcast exclusively for the dairy industry.
One of our sponsors of the Dairy Voice podcast is National DHIA. NDHIA ensures information accuracy and represents their members' interests. They are the direct voice for the dairy information industry. To find out more, go to dhia.org.
Well, welcome to the latest edition of the podcast series on dairy business, sponsored by Showbox Sires and called The Evolution of the Great Cow. And I've got the pleasure of being in Cairn, Saskatchewan, Canada today. Benbie Holsteins, who's hosting a great event here in Western Canada. And I'm with two of the staples of the purebred business in Western Canada. I want the world to know we've done interviews with guys from Australia and New Zealand of recent. We've done some guys from the UK. I want the whole group of listeners to learn about Western Canada and the great cattle here. So I'm going to start today's interview with Ian Crosbie, who he and his family own Benbie Holsteins, one of the best breeding herds in Canada, and one of the most enthusiastic young people in the business. So, Ian, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little about your operation.
Well, thanks for having me on, Tim. We're at Benbie Holsteins here. We are a family-owned and operated operation. We milk 160 Holsteins, a couple jerseys mixed in there as well. Farm about 1,800 acres of land here to keep the whole operation running smoothly.
Well, and it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Ian, you say you finally had rain. It's been dry here for 7 years. And tell us a little about your weather conditions.
Yeah, I don't know if I stepped on a mirror or what, but we had 7 pretty horrible years there for a while. This year it finally decided to rain for us. So things look phenomenal around here right now, and which was good for having a sale. It's a lot nicer to be staring at green than having dust blowing in your eyes.
You bet. And it's green. It's beautiful. So you led me into my next question, Ian. I'm going to stay with you for a second. Talk to us a little bit about what in the world you're doing today. Purebred high-end cattle auctions in Western Canada, something that doesn't happen every day. So tell us what in the world made you dream this up and why are you doing it?
Few and far between to have any kind of sale activity go on in the purebred world out here in Western Canada. And used to always be that on this exact same weekend in the past years, Rocky Mountain, they would host their sale. It was always a fantastic event that those guys put on right before the Calgary Stampede. Looking around things at our farm here, we thought this was as high a caliber of cattle that we've ever had on the farm. And if there was a time to have a sale, the time would be now. So everything just kind of fit in properly, and I called you up and you said you're on board and elevated it even more with the great consignments that you've gotten out of the United States and put it all together, and we're ready to have a good event here tonight.
Successful dairy professionals get it. Optimizing feed efficiency is key to optimizing milk production, and that's especially important when margins are tight. What you put into your herd's ration is essential to the performance you see later. That starts with fermentation in the rumen, which supports increased milk production and milk component yield. Talk to your Purina representative today about adding Purina Animal Nutrition's Efficiency Fermentation product to your herd's ration.
Well, we're excited. There's a nice crowd coming. It's going to be a big event. But Ian, you referenced the previous purebred auctions in this part of the world. The guy sitting to my right is one of the catalysts for all this. John, welcome to our podcast. You're known as one of the great auctioneers in the world, and we surely enjoy working with you. But he referenced the Rocky Mountain sales. Give us a little history of high-end Holstein purebred auctions in this part of the world, John.
Well, it goes back a few years, Tim. Welcome everybody. It all started back probably in the mid-90s, and Dave Shellick, who was with Alta Genetics at that time, just after they started their milking herd. And they went out and bought all these great cattle who were flushing and everything. And so it was coming time to market these cattle, and they were putting these cattle in different sales throughout North America. So Dave and I were driving back from Brubaker Sale Arena at Royal Time one time, and they had just sold a bunch of cattle at Brubaker's and done well. But I said to Dave, I think you need to think about having your own sale. And let's just bring in some top-notch consigners throughout Canada. But we really want to showcase the Alta Genetic herd and Western Canada. Typical Dave said a dumb idea and everything like that. And so we went back and we had a beer at the Royal, and Afterwards, we got talking about a little more. He went back to his executive and they phoned me up and said, John, we want to do it and let's get at it. Away I went and found a bunch of consigners, walkers, a bunch of great consigners to stepped up and put some great cattle, and the rest was history after that. It turned out to be a phenomenal deal. And then Morsan Holsteins, they came in later so that we could do alternate years and such. And really a great showcase, and we brought people from all over the world. The first few sales and genetics we were selling cattle to South America, to Europe, to Australia. One or two managed to stay in Canada after all of that. It was great.
Hey there, after you've finished enjoying this podcast, might I recommend you join me, Tim Hammerich, and our guests on Clarity at Work from Zoetis. We'll be talking genetics and their place on the dairy. You've got a seat at the table as we discuss innovations, what's next for the industry, and more.
I have to find the value in everything that I do, and I still find value in Clarified Plus, so we're going to continue to use it.
Just search for Clarity at Work wherever you listen to podcasts. Once you finish with this podcast, of course.
I want to move quickly to Western Canadian cattle. And we'll start with the elder statesman, John, first. I think one thing that maybe our population in North America doesn't understand is how powerful the cows have been from Western Canada. John, can you speak to that a little bit and what Western Canadian cattle have done for the Holstein business in around the world, but specifically North America?
Exactly, Tim. I'm glad that you're identifying that. If you go back into the early years, back when Acme Holsteins were starting to truck back, Acme Sylvia champion at the Royal, it started back then with Pickard and Clark. Went on through with Norm Macklins with Scarlet Red going to the Royal. And then after that, there was just, the Black Rose came out of BC. And then we go to Haley and we go to Lily. And I'm going to miss a whole bunch of other cows in betwixt. Beauty. The key about those cows, though, Tim and Ian, I think, as a guy that raised cattle, is the cattle that come out of Western Canada are a hardy bunch. It's not the most kindest environment out here. These cattle put through forage, they eat tons and tons of hay, build that great capacity, that strength and immunity. Everybody that comes out west here to judge shows or to watch shows, they always comment on the strength and the power, not always the tallest, but that big, deep open rib and that wide pin and the hardiness. And that even goes to the commercial cattle. Many buyers that come out of Eastern North America that buy cattle out of Western Canada always comment on how healthy and hardy those cattle are out of here. It's a result of the environment, plus some fantastic cattlemen.
Great cattlemen. And I was going to say, not only are the cattle hardy, the people are hardy, because things are few and far between. You have to be passionate. And I agree, John. I think, and I'll reference myself, I came out here and worked for Ian at a sale 4 or 5 years ago. I bought a couple cows that day at that show. They went on, one of them was just reserve national champion jersey that we bought at that event. Mm-hmm. But my point is, I don't think a lot of us that haven't been here for a show or to the herds understand how good the herds are. And Ian, you've experienced it now. You tell us what you think the perspective of the Western Canadian population of cattle is today.
I think John nailed it, especially with the hardiness to it. And people don't spread out. We're not a real close area. It's across our 4 Western provinces, but I don't think people realize just how passionate some of the breeders are out here. They've done such a fantastic job. And every year you see it, there'll be an animal or two, just like when you came out, you pull a cow out from Western Canada, you send her back where, she gets a lot more eyeballs on her and that. And the next thing you know, you have a world famous one named cow. Every couple of years, you see like one that's right at the very top, and it just keeps happening. I think it's going to continue to keep happening.
And truly passionate guys like you two guys sitting here with me help drive that. But I do think it's important that we tell the world just how good these cows are. But you both referenced the cow people here. And I just want to quickly divert to that before we wrap up this talk. Ian, you've got a lot of mentors and people that have taught you a lot in this business. None of us get through this, John, without mentors. Ian's a young guy that's as passionate and energetic about this as anybody I know. Who influenced you?
More than 2 handfuls of people. I can start listing off. When I was a kid, I first started going to the shows with the Fornwald family, and that's where I got the bug for it all. But yeah, growing up, Cord and Ridley,
yep.
With Stand-Up Wedgwood, 2 cattlemen. I don't think that I've done more than those guys, or definitely put on more miles as far as travel goes. They would definitely be 2 of my big mentors as well. The late Logan Chalik, as I was growing up in that, there was no more passionate cowman than he was. He always said, like, as he was getting sick there and before he passed, that cows, you can have all the show cows, a fancy barn, everything in the world, but it's the people that drive this business and make it great. That's what life's all about. And you try and keep that in tune. And that was part of the reason for wanting to have the sale. It brings people together. That's something that's not just for a bloody funeral or something like that. So
no, that's right. I mean, really, all good points, you know, and Ian, you bring those up. And John, you and I've been in this business long enough to watch people come and go. But when you look around this sale tonight, there's going to be some legends in the crowd. You talk about how that has influenced this whole part of the world.
The legends by a long shot, they are legends. Contributors to the industry, hallmark guys that have blazed new paths, and this industry out here, a very special one. And the key for me is being a marketer and a guy that tries to get cattle sold throughout North America, is how humble these people are and how willing they are to work with people outside the province. They follow up and they just absolutely have so much pride in seeing their cattle leave the farm, go to another place and do well. They that prefix carries with them, and they carry that prefix with pride and honor, and they just love seeing other people do well with them. Because most of the people out here don't have the ability, the knowledge to really take it to that top level, but they realize that when that good guy comes along and that good farm comes along and wants to buy that cow, she's going, and have fun with her and make all the money you can out of it.
And isn't that the case? I mean, it doesn't matter what part of the world is. You want your cattle with the best people possible, and you guys have done that.
All I'm going to say, people, is if you do come to Western Canada, bring your toothbrush and a big suitcase, because it's not 15 minutes between farms. it's a bit of traveling to do, but when you get to the place, you will be rewarded with a great bunch of cattle.
We've always said if we wind up having a good one here, she's in witness protection program, because no one can come and see her and find her. All we get is feed sales when they wind up showing up.
That's right.
That's right. And so, you know, that is right. It's vast land. There's people and cows, but it's always worth it, because number one, the people are great, the cows are great, and they go on and do good things. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast, to tell the world just how good these cattle are. So
if you get a chance, people, to go through the catalogs, have a look at the generations and generations in these pedigrees. A lot of the pedigrees, even now that they're being developed in other parts of North America, a lot of them started right here in Western Canada. You just go back that 8-9 generations.
Well, and we talk a lot in my world about seed stock and about breeding great cattle. And to me, I talk in these podcasts all the time about 3 prongs under the stool of breeding great cattle. One is genetics, one is management, and one is people. Yeah. And I think Western Canada, your part of the world, and West have proven that you have all 3. You've got great care, you've got great genetics, and you've got great people. Ian, John, I'm going to let you both wrap up this with your wish to send to the public. By the time they see this, Ian, your sale will be history. You're either going to be extremely wealthy or on a street corner with a pan.
Well, there's no way I'm extremely wealthy, because whatever comes out is probably going right back. And we got some pretty good consignments out here too.
So give people one goodbye and kind of a welcome to this part of the world.
Welcome to Benbie Holsteins in Saskatchewan. I sure hope you guys tuned in. If you're a future buyer, best of luck with your purchase.
We got plans. We're going to try and get this thing back on the rails where we can make this an annual deal with some other farms involved. That's our plans. We'll see how it goes. We'll keep you updated on that. Benbie Holsteins, just about 3 hours north of North Dakota. You can come to Calgary. We're about 5 hours north of Great Falls, Montana. Lots of good ways to get out here.
Well, thank you. Two great guys to wrap up this section of the podcast. John Copithorne from Alberta and Ian Crosbie from Saskatchewan. Thank you two for joining us on this edition of Showbox Sires Series, Evolution of the Great Cow.